guy was, and I was just like, oh, if that was the thing you needed at the end, it sucked.
Yeah, I mean, he was my highest or second highest owned guy. My highest owned, he was my highest owned.
And we are live. Welcome to the MLB Strategy Show. It is Monday, June 27th. I am Josh Engelman. I am joined by Adam Scher. We are brought to you by PrizePicks. I'm repping the brand today too, by the way. Comfortable hoodie. Thank you, PrizePicks, for that one. 9-game MLB slate tonight. Perfect size slate. Everything about this slate is absolutely amazing until you look at the pricing on the Dodgers playing in Coors today and you realize that they have ruined everything. But we will get to that in a bit. Before we do anything at all, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Follow us both on Twitter because that would be very nice. Adam, how was your weekend, man?
It was good. Nice. Had a couple days off. Went to dinner last night with my sister, her fiance, my dad for a belated Father's Day. Told you I was very proud of myself for tricking my sister into said dinner. I'd wanted to go out to like a nice restaurant by me, and I sent the first place that I wanted to go to. I sent my sister the menu, and my sister, who makes good money but is just frugal, looks at the menu and is like, "I'm not paying to go there." So I'm like, okay. So I sent her the menu for a South American place with like a sharing concept where, if you just look at the prices, it's a lot cheaper. But if you ignore that you're buying like a million different things. So she's like, all right, whatever, we can go here. Got her to spend exactly how much she had said she didn't want to spend. So was really proud of myself for that one. She admitted later that I successfully tricked her. So my weekend was pretty good.
Do you think she's just going to shoot a hole in whatever your choice is next time? Or do you think she'll just like acquiesce to the Italian restaurant out of the gate, being like, I don't care, whatever?
She's going to snap veto every single thing I ever want to go to again.
Yeah, that's what I figured. It was either one or the other, where she's just like, okay, I don't care anymore. Or I guess obviously, her being your sister, she knows you, and she's just you're going to lose out on a bunch of like middle ground stuff moving forward.
Yeah. She's just not going to. Yeah, she's going to just poke holes in anything I want to do.
Yeah, well, that's fair. 9 games today. I sent you a DM earlier this morning and said, wait till you see the Dodgers for today's slate, and it is broken, and the mid tier of pitching is broken today, which is going to make for some very interesting like strategy discussions, but it's also going to make for a really, really awful setup slate. We'll see what we get to, but I'm ready to just dive in if you are.
Yeah, sounds good.
Here we go. First game up, Nats and Pirates. I actually don't know. This didn't have a line or a total when I first started today. Does it have one now? All right, so plus 115 for Pittsburgh, minus 135 for Washington. I'm in the ballpark of that number. 9.5 is a little bit higher than what I actually had in, but we'll see. We don't officially know the Pittsburgh starter yet, is what I'm seeing. I put in, let's see, some random dude who I'd never heard of before. Miguel Yajure. What are you seeing?
For Pittsburgh?
Yeah.
DraftKings, when I looked this morning, I thought had Contreras. Now you're right, though. I'm seeing that same guy.
And then Fangraphs has Osvaldo Bido as the Pirates starter. So what I think we should really do is ignore who the hell's starting for the Pirates until we actually have an idea, and talk about that on either the Deeper Dive or Live Before Lock tonight. We'll just get into this one because it's about a coin flip game, it seems, no matter what, just slightly more runs. Eric Fede on one side, TBD on the Pittsburgh side. Fede grabbing about 7% ownership. Seems fine, I guess. I don't... He's not going to be one of the 8 best pitchers we talk about today.
Yeah, I think it's just he's facing the Pirates, and he's like an average-ish pitcher, so he's certainly in play, but in play in the sense where like if he ends up in around 7% of my lineups, I won't be surprised. But I'm not going through the slate and looking at Eric Fede and being like, oh, this is where people are missing. Like, he's a great play. It's a good matchup. It's an okay pitcher. He doesn't really stand out one way or the other.
Okay. We can skip the Pirates or whoever. If it is this Miguel Yajure guy, I gave him 3 innings. He is the flat minimum. I don't get the sense that he's going to be coming into play because there is basically no need to aggressively pay down at pitching today.
I don't even see a starter at all now for Pittsburgh. On Fangraphs, I mean.
I mean, if you go to the live scoreboard, they list Osvaldo Bido.
Oh, okay. I went to the probable pitchers.
Oh yeah, I don't ever go there.
Well,
Like the probable pitchers didn't have Gossman in the list earlier today either, and I had to add him in. He might be there now, but
he's there
like
now.
every once in a while I have to add people in. But yeah, Osvaldo Bido potentially. I don't know. We got plenty of time. I think we'll know the starting pitcher by the time we get to the deeper dive. I hope so. Let's talk bats though. Pirates are 5th in aggregate ownership. The Nats are 6th. There's not a lot separating these guys, and they're really similar in makeup as well. 6th and 7th in top stack, 1st and 3rd in top value. I guess we'll talk about the Pirates first since they're owned a little bit more and significantly better from a value perspective. How do you feel about Pittsburgh in this one against Fede?
I think it's an okay spot. Obviously, it's not a very good offense. Fede this year only a 16% strikeout percentage against lefties, 20% against righties. He's done a pretty good job limiting power to both sides of the plate. 151 expected ISO to lefties, 133 to righties. O'Neal Cruz, assuming he's leading off, is going to look like a solid shortstop option. His price has come up a bit though. Brian Reynolds, kind of the same thing. Like he's good, but the salary is rising a little bit. Vogelbach looks like a really good, a solid, cheap, very cheap first base option. Sawinski looks okay. I can see getting to the Pirates just from a value standpoint, really.
Yeah, they're clearly solid in that. The guys that you're paying for are talented bats to begin with. O'Neal Cruz now up to 3,800, so they got rid of that garbage 2K price tag as quickly as they could. Well, not as quickly as they could, but yeah, they took their time, but now it's reasonable. Yeah, look, if you need to pay down, I think it's very obviously easy to get to Pittsburgh. I just don't know how often you're going to have to do it.
Right. It's just when you look at the pitcher pricing, it becomes not that important, I don't think.
All right, let's dig in. Oh, we got a super chat actually from George/Jorge. It says Adam without a cap deserves some attention today, and that clean haircut, dope. There you go.
Appreciate it.
Compliments for you. $10 compliments too. It's always good to see. Let's talk Nats. I mean, they're sort of like a slightly more expensive version of the Pirates. It doesn't appear they're getting anybody difficult from a pitching perspective at the very least. Juan Soto sort of transcends everything else in this lineup. It's like I want them a little bit less than I would want the Pirates.
Yeah, I guess that's how I feel too. There's, as weird as this sounds, there are fewer bats in the Nats lineup that I can point to individually and say like, oh yeah, they look pretty good or they look okay. Like, with the Pirates, I think I named 4 or 5 guys. With the Nats, it's typically Soto, Bell, Cruz look good, and then everyone else is just sort of there. Yeah, they're just another kind of middle of the road offense for me. I assume the matchup's going to be fine. They're projected to get some ownership. They look like good values, but again, I just don't really know how much. I don't know how far hitter value is going to go today when you have good mid-range pitching and you also have the value Dodgers.
Yeah, the 6.6 run implied total value Dodgers, which unfortunately is true. We started this question off when I was back home in Pennsylvania, and we're going to keep it going now. Are there any cash game options in this one on the Nats or Pirates side?
I doubt it. I mean, if you told me that Juan Soto or O'Neal Cruz ended up in lineups or Vogelbach, I guess, like I wouldn't be shocked, but I just kind of doubt it knowing what I know about pricing elsewhere on the slate.
Yeah. O'Neal Cruz, if he's leading off at 3,800 at short, can very easily work his way into that discussion. Just don't know if it's going to matter if you're getting 5 Dodgers bats. I think a lot will actually have to do with, and I mentioned it to you in DMs, and we'll get to it when we get to the Dodgers. If Trace Thompson is in the Dodgers lineup, he's 2K. That just sort of allows you to pay up differently in the 3 non-Dodgers cash game spots. So we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. I don't have anything else here for Nats or Pirates.
Nope, me neither.
Yankees and A's, 5.3 run implied total for the Yankees, 3.2 for the A's. That is a monstrous line. It's Jordan Montgomery going for New York, Paul Blackburn going for Oakland. Blackburn unowned, should be unowned. Jordan Montgomery owned. owned more than anyone else on the slate, in fact, because for reasons that I cannot tell, he is 8K today. The floor is yours.
Yeah, I mean, it's an excellent matchup for Montgomery. He's a good pitcher. If you wanted to point to a negative here, it's that his strikeout numbers are down pretty considerably this year from previous years. He's only struck out 18.5% of hitters overall. He's only struck out 16.3% of right-handed hitters. He's striking out a ton of lefties, but that's not likely to really be a factor today because you should get a very right-handed lineup from Oakland. But I've mentioned this before on Montgomery. I'm not totally sold that you continue to just see him not strike guys out because his plate discipline numbers are actually the same, if not better, across the board, really, than his career averages. And that's not the end all be all. Like, strikeouts are more predictive of future strikeouts than plate discipline numbers are. But the thing is, like, when you see somebody like Montgomery go from striking out more guys, he's striking out less guys now, but he's also walking less guys. He's still pitching really, really well. A lot of times that's like a change in pitching philosophy, and you can kind of expect the strikeouts to remain down going forward. But normally that shows up in plate discipline numbers too. Like, if he's intentionally pitching to contact more, he's going to get less swings and misses. He's going to get less chases on pitches outside of the zone if his stuff isn't as good. Those numbers are all still up. So I still expect that even if he doesn't get back to what he had been doing in the past, that you at least get him closer to that 23, 24% strikeout percentage going forward. But even if you don't, even if we assume that he's just going to, for whatever reason, strike out 18.5% of guys going forward, he's still only $8,000. He's still facing the Oakland A's. He's still been a very good pitcher overall. He's allowed a 296 WOBA to righties, 333 expected WOBA. He's underpriced one way or the other. And then when you factor in that I still just have no reason to think his strikeouts remain this low going forward, it makes him look even better.
I wouldn't be surprised if they do, but I don't necessarily think it's going to make him a worse pitcher. It might make him a worse DFS pitcher. Like, all the XFIP numbers and Sierra, everything in that regard is all the same. If you look at his pitch mix, though, at least per the StatCast pitch types, he's greatly increased his sinker percentage and throwing like less general fastballs or cutters, which I think is interesting. If you take that information and think about it for a second, his ground ball percentage up from 43% to 48%. So if he's throwing more sinkers, you expect more ground balls. Both of those two things are happening. It's not resulting in more hard contact or anything. The aggregate numbers still look the same. So it's possible he's just throwing a sinker a little bit more, getting less strikeouts, but getting more ground balls offsetting like that.
And I think that's a good point, because that is one thing that typically when you see pitchers make what I consider a pretty dumb adjustment to get less strikeouts, typically they are throwing sinkers more and they're getting more ground balls. And when you look at the right-handed hitters, I mentioned he's only striking out 16% this year. If you go back to last year, he had a 25% strikeout percentage against right-handed hitters. He was throwing his changeup 28% of the time. This year he's throwing it 29%, so no real change there. He was throwing his curveball 24%. This year he's throwing it 21%, so not a huge change there. But this year he's throwing his sinker 33% of the time. Last year he threw it 18% of the time. He threw his fastball 16. He's throwing his fastball 10 now. So you are getting quite a bit more sinker usage specifically and fastball usage in the aggregate. He still has a 14.6% swinging strike percentage against righties, though. So I think that you would expect, given the change in what he's throwing, I think you would expect him to strike out a lower percentage of guys than he did last year. I just still don't think that it's 16% is the true number.
Yeah, I think it could rebound a little bit, normalize a little bit, but he's definitely trying something a little bit different. It's not changing anything for me. Like, he appears to still be getting good results. So
right.
That's all that really matters. And honestly, this Oakland lineup isn't very good. If this game was in Oakland, it would sort of be even crazier for him. Do you agree that he's the best combination of like upside and price today?
I think the best combination of upside and price is probably Giolito. I think that Montgomery probably projects a bit better because he's not facing Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout and Taylor Ward.
Yeah, I guess upside probably wasn't the right call, because I agree that Giolito has the higher like overall ceiling, because
he's got the highest strikeout percentage on the slate. He's $8,300.
I think Jordan Montgomery at 37% ownership and being like the highest ownership guy is correct. I don't think anything is wrong with his ownership at all. And we
have Montgomery projected like a 1.5 higher than Giolito. I think that makes sense to me, again, just because he's not facing 2 or 3 of the best hitters in baseball. He's facing the Oakland A's.
I got him at 1.8 points ahead of Giolito. I think that makes some sense. We don't have to talk about Paul Blackburn, right?
I don't think so. I mean, he's a pretty good ground ball pitcher. He doesn't get blown up as often as you would expect. But he's also run pretty good this year. 115 expected ISO to righties in particular. Oh no, sorry, I misread that. So yeah, he just does a good job not giving up power. He has a sub 100 ISO to righties, 115 expected ISO. Lefties, he's allowed a 181 ISO, but only a 164 expected ISO. But the thing is, I mean, he's facing the Yankees here. He's outside of the Coliseum or whatever they're calling it these days, the shithole park in Oakland. So I mean, it's certainly a really, really dangerous matchup for him. And even though he is typically good at getting quality contact, keeping the ball on the ground, limiting home runs, that only goes so far when you're just facing a lineup full of power hitters that you're going to let hit the ball.
Let's talk bats. And obviously, I don't get the sense that we're going to be talking about Oakland bats in this one. Are you trying to advocate for anything there?
Not really.
Okay.
Yeah,
you don't even have to.
There's some value, I guess, if Noisy's leading off. Laureano and Sean Murphy and Bettencourt are okay, but nothing that is going to stand out.
I wish I could say out loud the text message that I just got that just popped up on my screen. I'll tell you and Jordan when we get off the show. I can't say these words on our stream. Let's talk Yankees
better friends
bats.
that don't use such inflammatory words.
Oh, it's not. It's the topic that's so ridiculous.
Nah.
Yeah, it's not like it's not that kind of bad. It's just the topic is not ideal. So Yankees bats are 5th in aggregate ownership. They are 2nd in top stack, and 2nd could be 1st on any other slate. It just can't be 1st today. Is there utility in going to the Yankees more than the current ownership that we see, given what we know is happening with the Dodgers?
There is utility in going to every single offense that has good hitters that is not named the Los Angeles Dodgers today.
Very true. I certainly like a few of these pieces for the Yanks. I think 5th in aggregate ownership is probably about right. Do you see it better? What do you want to do here? You think you're going to get over that 8% aggregate number for New York?
The way ownership looks right now, I would think I probably end up around there because they don't look overowned. It's going to be close to impossible for them to be overowned given the ownership that I expect to go to the Dodgers. But they also just look very similar to, you have them, you have Toronto, you have Colorado in cores, you have Texas in a decent spot against Bubic as the 3rd highest top stack percentage. All of those teams just getting similar ownership. So the way it looks right now, I'm more likely to just be kind of spreading it out across those offenses, because with the Dodgers getting as much ownership as they are, not like if you don't have Dodgers, you're different. So there's no, at least in theory, there's obviously I haven't built lineups yet, but thinking through how I would ideally approach this slate, I don't really want to just narrow it down to I need the Yankees to break the slate. I'm fine with just narrowing it down to, if the Dodgers fail, I have the Yankees, I have the Rangers, I have, whoever else.
Blue Jays.
The Blue Jays, yeah, exactly.
Anybody from the Yankees that you think sneaking into a cash lineup? Judge.
Yeah, I mean, Judge is never wrong. There's nobody from the Yankees that actually, Josh Donaldson at 3,400 certainly, I guess, could be there, but I know you have Justin Turner at third base for $4,500 in cores, so I assume it's not going to be Josh Donaldson. So yeah, I mean, with the Yankees, there's guys where it's just if they get there, that's fine. Aaron Judge certainly could show up, but there's nobody that stands out where it's oh, that's clearly a mispricing.
I don't know who King of Smack is, but they don't appear to be bright. What up, King of Smack? Anything else here, Yanks and A's?
I wanted to quickly look. Sean V mentioned that Paul Blackburn's been better on the road for whatever reason. My favorite thing to do when he points those out is to look and see that he's just faced ridiculously bad offenses on the road. But that actually hasn't really been the case here. Still, I doubt that there's any actual reason for it. But I was hoping that I'd pull it up and the road schedule would just be Tigers, Pirates, Tigers, Pirates, Tigers, Pirates.
There's basically nothing that could exist that would make Paul Blackburn a better pitcher outside of Oakland than in.
Yeah, So when you talk about pitching, I mean, for one, you have to just like use logic. Pitching in Oakland is typically going to be better than pitching like most other places.
Yeah.
I'll buy into it sometimes, even if it's like a kind of tough pitcher's park. Like Aaron Nola, I buy into him being better at home because I think it's just a feel for the mound. He can tell the groundskeepers to do whatever the hell he wants to the
Yeah.
mound, and all of that. So I'll buy into that a little bit because like they can basically just have it catered so that it feels exactly how they want it to feel when they land and all of that. But there's
Yeah.
no like if you're pitching in a good park, there's no way that you're like pitching better on the road. There's so many variables there because you're pitching in different parks all the time. It's not like you're just like, oh, he pitches better in this one other park that he pitches it on the
Yeah.
road. Like you're talking about all these different parks. It's much more likely to just be a random thing than, oh, for whatever reason, this guy pitches better in his home park that he pitches in 20 times a year.
trying to take a look at this. I mean, like we're talking
Yeah,
about.
Josh Gillum said he loses Ks at home because with the big foul balls, he doesn't strike guys out anyway, though.
Yeah, that's also not an evaluation metric. Like,
well, I mean, it's a thing
from a skill set standpoint. You're just getting outs that aren't
right.
strikeouts.
Yeah. From a fantasy standpoint, I do
Yeah.
always find the conversation about is Oakland a good park for fantasy pitchers interesting because you do lose strikeouts when the 0-2 ball that's fouled off and would be 10 rows back anywhere else is caught by the first baseman. But from just a pitching standpoint, that doesn't matter.
No, not at all. Not at all. He's given up no home runs on the road and has given up home runs in a place and 5 home runs at home. Like that's basically the difference here.
Right.
Doesn't matter. Let's keep it moving. We probably spent more time than we should have just on Paul Blackburn. Schedule for the rest of the day. 3:45. Best Ball Mania Monday coming up on the Best Ball channel. You got to check that one out. I believe that's Nick and Savoca. Just going off the top of my head. I think J-Dog is nodding his head positively. Yeah. Oh, don't think that went away, buddy. Don't think it went anywhere. J-Dog is here to stay. Sean V touting that ERA is a huge difference. I wouldn't even know where to look for ERA. It's 2022, just in case you haven't heard. MLB Deeper Dive coming up at 5 p.m. Adam is on that. MLB Live Before Lock coming up at 6 p.m. I am on that, so you get a good one there. And then MLB player projections are free today. If you're watching this show, that should be very interesting to you because you can check out all the projections that are at Stokastic.com. Go there, get them now. Blue Jays and Red Sox. 5.1 run implied total for the Blue Jays, 3.9 for the Red Sox. Kevin Gausman and Connor Siebold going here. Gausman, 21% owned. I actually like him a little bit more than that, but I don't really have a big dog in the fight. It's a more difficult matchup against Boston. Connor Siebold at 3% ownership, flat 4K. Let's start with Gausman first. How do you feel about that ownership? How's he look to you at 9,800?
The ownership seems fine. It's a little bit higher than I expected because for one, it's a difficult matchup with Boston. For two, you have the mispricing across the board. I mean, we already talked about Montgomery. We've kind of alluded to Giolito, but you also have George Kirby at 7,100, facing Baltimore, who we talked about before. I don't think is the best matchup anymore, but he's still really cheap for a good pitcher. Adam Wainwright is pretty cheap. Not my favorite guy, but he's cheap. There's just enough mid-range pitching here where I'm kind of surprised Gausman's pulling 20%, but at the same time, when you consider that there are value bats across the board, my guess, since I haven't crunched lineups yet, is just that it's like, okay, like when you make lineups, you're kind of just in a position where it's like you have enough lineups where you're like, okay, well, I could play Kirby, or I could play like the same lineup and play Gausman. So, I'll just like play Gausman here. So overall, I think the ownership makes sense. If hitter pricing were tighter today, I think Gausman would be the first guy that started to lose ownership.
Any Connor Siebold? Do you anticipate going to him or whatever ends up being on the hill for the Pirates?
No, not particularly.
Okay. That works for me. Let's talk bats. And clearly we're going to be looking to the Blue Jays before we look at the Red Sox because one of these guys is Kevin Gausman and the other is a random guy that I've never heard of. So Blue Jays bats are 7th in aggregate ownership, 4th in top stack percentage, 6th in our stack score. Springer, Bichette, Kirk, all into double digits. Vlad, still Vlad, and probably the best bat in the lineup. I'm guessing the Blue Jays sort of land in a similar way to the Yankees for you.
Yeah, Seabold's put up good numbers at AAA this year. 24.8% strikeout percentage, 2.99 FIP. The rest of season projections that are available on FanGraphs are absolutely horrible, but I also think laughable because there's just no way in the world that you should be projecting a guy that has been striking out 25% of guys at AAA to suddenly strike out 16% in the majors. Like, I don't really know how that happens or why
Yeah.
you would think that it would. But certainly can expect, some sort of drop off from AAA. And then he's facing a good Toronto lineup as well. So certainly willing and happy to get to these Blue Jays bats against a very unknown pitcher in Seabold.
So I was responding to somebody in chat. I think we both agree that Vlad is the best overall, well, probably the best overall bat in the Blue Jays lineup. Do you see Springer or Kirk sneaking into any cash lineup? Getting a little bit of ownership. Springer at 4,800, Kirk at 4,100.
Yeah, like
if you really are getting,
could see Kirk at 4,100. The issue is that you're going to have Will Smith. That's probably the preferred option there.
Yep, probably. It's so hard to talk about this when it's just like, you're going to get 5 Dodgers. It can probably be any 5 of the 9 that play.
Right. Yeah, like that's kind of the thing. The answer for is he in play in cash really on this slate? At least on DraftKings. I haven't looked at the FanDuel pricing at all, but knowing what the DraftKings pricing is on the Dodgers, the answer is really it depends what 5 Dodgers you use and what positions you have left open, because the Dodgers across the board are the priority in cash. And then you're just rounding out your the Dodgers are the priority in cash. The pitching is probably Montgomery and one of Giolito or Kirby. And then you're just rounding out your team with whatever 3 guys fit around the 5 Dodgers you played.
Hornbots here. Cheapest sex dating, Find and Funk. Gotta love it. Red Sox bats? Is there anything here for you outside of Devers?
I don't hate getting to them in tournaments just because they at least have talent. It's certainly, I mean, out of the good offenses we've talked about so far, like I would certainly rather get to Toronto against Seabold. I'd rather get to the Yankees against Blackburn, but Boston is still a good offense. Gausman has struggled a bit recently, which, to go back to the conversation in chat, it's not affecting how I view Gausman as a pitcher. It's just a point where it's like, he's not infallible. He has had some issues. I'd seen some suggestions that maybe he was tipping pitches. I don't know. But more so for me, it's just that the Red Sox do have plenty of upside in this offense, and I really just would like to get at least some of every good offense on this slate, assuming I'm not going to be jamming in the 30% of the Dodgers.
Yeah, I think it's reasonable. I mean, they are 10th in top stack, 16th in ownership. There's a path here where you just want to go to some Boston, and you get the added bonus of 20% Gausman on the opposite side of it too. So there's some utility there in a larger field GPP. Anything else?
Nope.
Guardians and Twins. 4.1 run implied total for the Guardians, 4.4 for the Twins. Tristan McKenzie and Sonny Gray. McKenzie, 6% owned. Sonny Gray, 3% owned. Both of these guys in the exact same sort of salary tier. I actually like Tristan McKenzie a little bit more than the current ownership, but again, he's like my 7th favorite pitcher, so I can't really go too hard. Do you like either side here? And I guess I should just say, how much do you like your boy Sonny Gray?
So I think they're kind of similar here, McKenzie and Gray, in that neither pitcher is getting much ownership. Neither one should be a priority. Like, I completely understand why Montgomery's getting ownership, Giolito's getting more ownership, Kirby's getting more ownership, all of that. But 5% ownership coming into McKenzie, 4% coming into Sonny Gray. I do think those numbers are just a little bit low in the sense that you're getting 7-1 odds on them versus Giolito. You're getting more than that on them versus Kirby and Montgomery. So McKenzie has taken a step back in terms of strikeouts this year. He's not walking guys like he used to, which was always the big thing for him. When he came up from the minors, it was like, this guy has electric stuff, but he has no idea where it's going. Now he has a better idea where it's going, but as a result, it's not quite as unhittable. But he still has a 22.4% strikeout percentage this year. Difficult matchup against the Twins, but the upside is certainly there for him. I mean, keep in mind, this is somebody that has the strikeout percentage 4 points higher than Jordan Montgomery this year. So the upside's certainly there. And then the side that I'm more interested in, which won't surprise anybody, is Sonny Gray has the 2nd highest strikeout percentage on the slate at 26.9%. It's not a good strikeout matchup against the Guardians, and that's one reason he doesn't project as well as these other options, and the ownership is low. But just from a range of outcomes and upside standpoint, you have a hard time convincing me Sonny Gray's ceiling isn't as high as almost any pitcher on this slate, and he's getting virtually no ownership.
Yeah, the only bad thing for Sonny Gray is that it's not a really great strikeout matchup 1
Right.
through 5. Otherwise, it's I'm happy to get there
Yeah, and one other thing to
at
mention,
no ownership whatsoever.
yeah, exactly. Like I don't think he's as good a play as these other guys, but he's just getting no ownership and certainly still good at getting strikeouts. He also threw 85 pitches last start, which is big because he had thrown like 60 or 65 in his first start back from the injured list. Then they got him up to 85. So I don't really think there's any reason to think he's going to be limited here.
I'm going to respond to. I was typing it, and now I'm just going to respond verbally to Judd's comment and question in chat. I realize it would be minimal, but do you weigh the away team slightly more because they're guaranteed to have 9 innings of offense? It's already in the projections, or at least it should be. It's certainly in ours. It should be in a projection system worth of salt that you're getting slightly more forced plate appearances for the away team than the home team.
Yep. Yeah, I think that was that. I always kind of just laugh at that. Not like laugh at the idea, but like that was one of those things. It's just crazy how like DFS has evolved. Like I don't know, 2015, 2016, that was one of the like sharp ideas. Was like people started to think like, oh wait, this team's guaranteed 9 plate appearances. What if we play them more? And then like now you just have projections.
Yeah, like for this game, I can say that I have Luis Arias in the leadoff spot for the Twins, projected for 4.5 plate appearances. I have Steve Kwan projected for 4.3. So like it's not a gigantic gap, but it is something.
Right.
And then it descends the whole way. I don't get the sense we're going to be talking too much here about offense. Guardians 11th in ownership, Twins 12th, both teams in double digits in top stack percentage or stack score. It looks like in the grand scheme of things, this is a game that's just going to get skipped across the board. Offense.
I want
and
some Minnesota
pitching.
for sure.
Go for it.
Just another high upside offense. But McKenzie also, not missing bats like he used to, giving up tons of power. 241 expected ISO to lefties this year, 273 expected ISO to righties. There are some strikeouts in the Twins lineup, so that's why I'm with you in that I don't mind getting to a very low owned McKenzie in tournaments either. But assuming Buxton's in the lineup, Buxton, Correa, Kepler, I'll keep going back to Kirilloff. Maybe at some point he'll start hitting. Gary Sanchez certainly has power. Minnesota's got a lot of power in their lineup against a pitcher that gives up a lot of power.
That's fair. I do have them ranking in top stack a little bit higher than we do right now.
And that's the other thing, just not getting ownership.
Also true. Other than Buxton, who should get it, everybody else is 3% or below. Yeah, there's something here. They might be a sneaky large field team that I end up with a bit more than like the 1% in the aggregate. Like a lefty Max Kepler at 1% at 5,100, pay up to be contrarian type stuff.
If I had to, right now, if I had to just like somebody said pick one contrarian stack, I think I would go Minnesota just because even like the Dodgers are obviously pulling all of the ownership, but then like that next tier, the Yankees and the Blue Jays, they're still popular. Minnesota's just kind of getting completely left off the board.
King of Smack with another gem. Cleveland is a good value stack. Cleveland is 17th of 18 in top value.
Yeah, I mean, just a rough matchup against Gray.
Yeah. Well, like, if we want to say that they're a good stack because
they're really
ceiling,
cheap.
I mean,
if that's what he
51,
meant,
62, 55, 51, 47. I don't know about really
Cleveland.
cheap.
He said Cleveland.
Oh, I can't read. My bad. Right here. My fault. Cleveland. Still 11th, but yeah, I'm a moron.
Yeah.
Well, here's the deal.
I don't like them as a value stack in the sense of like value versus, combined with chances of success. I like them as a value stack in the sense of outside of Jose Ramirez and Ahmed Rosario, nobody in the lineup is above, and Jimenez, nobody's above $3,600.
Here's the problem, guys. AEW pay-per-view last night, Forbidden Door. I was up late. I fell asleep on the couch, woke up on the couch, didn't get a good night's sleep. Apologies to King of Smack. I'm just dumb. Willing to admit it.
Damn, I didn't know Buxton had a good game yesterday. That the one slate I take off.
I mean, you could have just assumed it.
I actually hadn't even thought of. I didn't even know he played. But
that's fair. He had been not playing for a bit. All right, let's talk a little bit about the presenting sponsor of this show. That would be PrizePicks. If you use the promo code Awesemo, you can get a 100% instant match deposit bonus of up to $100. It's as good of a deal as you're going to find. Put in 100, get another 100, and you're not worried about like sharks or optimizers. You're building parlay cards. You can do that with MLB, WNBA, tennis. It's Wimbledon right now. You can get into that. Golf, MMA. You can get into highlight. That's here right now. If you feel like El Barba is in a good spot today, you can take El Barba in highlight. I don't know what that is. You put up to 5 bets in the same ticket, get 10x your entry fee if they all hit. We've got the free PrizePicks player prop tool at stokastic.com that can certainly help you out. I'm going to hit Adam with 1 or 2 of the pitcher fantasy scores. Let's take a look at Jordan Montgomery over under 33.5.
Slight under. We have him at 32.5.
I got him at 33.4, so that one's going to be a straight push for me. How about the guy that he's going up against, Paul Blackburn, 20.5?
Yeah, that's such a low number.
And yet I have
I
it
would
as an
go
under.
over. Just you're hoping that he just gets the ground balls hit at people.
I got him at 17.9, so
We have him at like
I'm going
22.
to take the under on Paul Blackburn. No, thank you. We'll hit your boy. Oh, we'll hit this entire most recent game, and then we'll get out of here and we'll keep talking. Back to Guardians and Twins. Tristan McKenzie, 30.5.
30.5 on McKenzie.
Yeah.
The under there. We have him at 28.3.
I agree with the under. This one's really easy to me. I'm not a huge fan, I guess, today. 30.5 on Sonny Gray.
So we have him way under. I hope
So
that changes throughout the day because I don't agree with that one.
What do we have him at?
24.5.
Okay. I'm even worse than that.
All right. So I'm glad you have a bad projection on him. What do you have his pitch count at?
I have him going 4 2/3 innings.
No.
No?
No.
Go on.
He's been on a pitch count his last 2 starts. He's back to normal now.
What's normal, though? I mean that sincerely. Like
90 to 100 at least.
Was he on a pitch count at the beginning of the year?
Actually, if I remember correctly, yeah.
Okay.
That's a really good question, but I think he was. I think he because I'm pretty sure.
One start he just did not pitch well. Three of his first 4 all under 5 innings as well, even in decent starts.
Right.
Even I can't go much further than 5 flat because it doesn't appear that he's just always going to be going deep in the games.
I'd 100% just be using whatever he's done in his career, not what he's done this season.
All right. Well, let's take a peek at that. Season stats. Last year, 135 1/3 innings in 26 starts was 5.2. So I could either give him 15 outs or 16 outs in that regard. Even if I gave him 16. If I give him 16 outs, if I take him up to 5 1/3, that puts his projection at 25.
So here's what happened at the beginning of the season. The first start.
Either way, I'm going way under Sonny Gray at 30.5.
Yeah, that's fine. As far as the pitch count this year, the first start he threw 76 pitches. If you remember, almost every pitcher was on a pitch count at the beginning in their first start because of the abbreviated spring training. Start number 2, he got rocked. He went on the injured list. So then he came back from the injured list through 66, 82, 84 in 6 innings, 95, 80 in 6 innings, went back on the injured list. So we're just repeating this. But that's the other thing that I would point out here is even though his pitch count wasn't super high, in the 84, 95, 80, he went 6, 7, and 6. So he was just being taken out because they were ready to go to the bullpen.
Yeah. I guess there's also the part of it where you still have to be aware that he hasn't exactly been healthy and been on pitch counts too. There's the possibility of reoccurrence of whatever.
Yeah.
I feel comfortable with giving him those extra 2 outs, taking him up to 16, make it more like it normally is. I don't get the sense that he's going to be fantastic. It's certainly going to make him look a little bit better, but either way, I think the line at PrizePicks is too high.
And to be clear, I wasn't taking a shot at you when I said that I was glad that you were also low. I just knew that I'd be able to ask you because my first assumption was that we have too low of a pitch count on him. So I was like, if you're there too, you probably know the answer to this.
Yeah. No, it's what we want to look at.
I just wanted to be clear because I take plenty of shots. I want them to at least be intended.
I hear you.
But five and 2/3 innings per start last season.
Yeah. I gave him that, or I gave him 5 1/3 for this one. I
Yeah.
think that's probably
Yeah,
the right
I think
sort of
that's right.
balance.
Yeah.
Cardinals and Marlins, 4-run implied total for the Cards, 3.5 for the Marlins. Adam Wainwright and Pablo Lopez. We've got some ownership coming in here. 20% going to Wainwright at 7,600, 8.5 going to Pablo Lopez at 9,100. I have these guys relative to salary pretty close to equal. Which side of this one do you expect to be on more, Wainwright or Lopez?
Probably Wainwright, just because the matchup's a little bit better. Like, there's not a lot of strikeouts in the Cardinals lineup. They're a very productive offense as well. Miami's not a bad offense, but there's a lot more strikeouts there. They're also not nearly as good as the Cardinals are. So I expect to be on the Wainwright side more. He's not as good a fantasy pitcher, only a 19% strikeout percentage this year compared to 25% for Lopez. So Lopez kind of reminds me of Sonny Gray in that he's one of the most talented pitchers on the slate. He's one of the best pitchers on the slate at getting strikeouts. He also just has a really difficult matchup to do it in.
I'm with you. If I'm going to get to one of these sides, I understand how you get to Wainwright more. Worse offense, better strikeout matchup, all that
Better
jazz.
price.
Still happy to get to a little bit of Pablo Lopez. No issues there. Both guys should go relatively deep into the game. One of these guys is a strikeout pitcher. The other one, not so much. Do you have issues with the ownership going to Wainwright or Lopez?
The Wainwright ownership seems a little bit high to me, but again, I get it. He's 7,600. And when you look at the alternatives in that price range, like George Kirby's already getting ownership, so it's not like, he's going overlooked or anything. If you wanted to move some of the Wainwright ownership to, I don't know, Syndergaard or Fetty or something, like I would get it, or Bubic, like I would get it. But
Yeah.
I guess it makes sense just where he's going to be the guy. Him and Kirby are certainly the two guys there that stand out the most.
Okay. Cardinals are dead last in aggregate ownership. The Marlins are 15th. Are we going to roster either side of this game today from a bats perspective?
The Cardinals fit into that category of just like a good offense that isn't the Dodgers, but I still think like I'm getting to them after I'm getting to Minnesota. I'm getting to them after I'm getting to the Yankees and the Blue Jays. I'm getting to them probably after the Red Sox even. But, they are at least a good offense that if you wanted to take some shots and just basically the way I'm thinking about it is if I fade the Dodgers in tournaments and the tournament winning stack is a good offense, not an offense where it's just like, wow, that's the best offensive performance they're going to have all year. If it's a good offense and I don't have them, I'm going to be really pissed off because by not having the Dodgers, I really just want to be getting to like every semblance of a good offense that I can. But the Cardinals are pretty close to the bottom of the list of those good offenses given the matchup and everything.
Guys, before we continue on to talk a little bit more about the rest of this slate, 380 people, 78 likes. If you're here and you haven't hit the like button yet, see if we could run that number north of 100. That would be a really nice cutoff. I don't have any like cash options or anything for Cardinals or Marlins.
No, me neither. Totally random question. Did you catch the highlights from the Mariners brawl yesterday?
Just very briefly, saw the double bird on the way out. Otherwise,
the whole thing was good. And then there's like a really cool story. Did you see the pizza story?
No.
So some woman on Twitter that's a Mariners fan, like DoorDashed a pizza to be delivered to Jesse Winker in the visiting clubhouse at the Angels Stadium, and like the delivery driver actually got it there and got it to Jesse Winker, like, and so then Jesse Winker DM'd her on Twitter and thanked her for the pizza.
That's awesome. I hope it was a good pizza.
It was from a place in California that I've heard of for having good pizza. So
even better. Very nice. Very nice. Royals and Rangers. 4-run implied total for the Royals, 4.5 for the Rangers. Chris Bubic and Martin Perez. Bubic 6% owned at 6,100. Perez 3% owned at 8,900. I'm more likely to get to Bubic here than I am to Perez. I'm not super fond of either guy though.
Yeah, I mean, I don't love either guy. I do sort of like the ownership on both. I think you can throw Perez into the like McKenzie category or Gray category. Certainly doesn't have the same strikeout stuff as Gray in particular, but 20% this year. He's overall a good pitcher in a good matchup. I'm not confident in Perez. I hate paying this kind of salary for him, but at the same time, he's just not pulling ownership on a slate where it is going to be kind of difficult to find contrarian plays because the chalk is so good. I don't hate using Perez just to offset ownership in some lineups. Same for Bubic. He's an okay pitcher. He's not particularly good. 19.5% strikeout percentage. Does have some underlying talent, but it hasn't really shown up in the major leagues yet. And you're just not going to need that value all that much. So the 8% ownership there makes sense to me.
All righty. I guess we're going to have to talk a little bit about bats in this one. The Rangers are 8th in ownership. The Royals are 9th. However, Texas, 3rd in our top stack tool, 2nd in top value, 2nd in stack score. I do not feel the same way about the Rangers that we do. Where do you land here? Because this feels interesting.
Yeah, I think probably closer to you. I like the Rangers. Okay. I don't like the Rangers as much as we like the Rangers, I don't think. But they're one way or the other. They're an offense I want to get to. Bubic
sure.
hasn't had much major league success yet against right-handed hitters this year. He's allowed a 206 expected ISO, 288 to lefties in a limited sample. There's plenty of power in this lineup with Semien, Seager, Garver, Garcia, Heim, Low. So I like the Rangers. I just think you could quibble a little bit over exactly where they rank.
Yeah, I'm a little bit lighter here for sure. Not anything too crazy. Like I still like Garver, Semien, Garcia. I think they all stand out. 1 through 6 certainly works for me. That Culberson Tavares portion is pretty piss poor. But do I want to get to the Rangers? Yeah, like they're not getting enough ownership that like something's going to drive me away from them. But I think we're a little lofty there. Maybe we see the line climb a little bit, and this looks a little bit more interesting. What about on the opposite side, Kansas City? Is there anything here for you? Up against the lefty, probably not the spot for me.
Yeah, not a lot that stands out. Like there's some cheap bats, but this just isn't really the slate that I think you need to be chasing like questionable value. No. I will mention too, we had talked about Kirk potentially as a cash catcher option if you didn't get the Smith. I think Garver at 3,200 is probably where I end up at catcher if I'm not able to get the Smith.
Yeah, let me take a look at that actually. See where I have it. Center. Catcher. Yeah, I think it's got to be Will Smith. He is currently projected for 30% ownership, and I have him so far ahead of everybody else that I'd be shocked.
My assumption is getting in Will Smith, but
yeah, it's Kirk and Garver as the other two options.
Yeah,
but yeah, I think Smith is just him. We're going to get there in a second. Do you have anything else you want to touch on Royals, Rangers? Are there, other than Garver, there are no cash options here, correct?
I don't think so. Like I don't know why you'd be playing $5,600 Corey Seager instead of Trey Turner if you're paying up a shortstop. Same thing, like 5K Semien looks good. $4,900 Muncy looks a hell of a lot better.
Yeah. Well, it's time to talk about them now. And this is going to be the piece that we really need to just talk about the most because this just looks crazy. And thank you guys for getting over 100 likes, up to 111 now, as we talk about the most important game on the slate. Rockies and Dodgers. 4.9 run implied total for the Rockies, 6.6 for the Dodgers. Chad Kuhl going for Colorado. Do not roster him at 6,700. Tyler Anderson going for the Dodgers. Do not roster him at 9,500. Or at least your mileage may vary on that one. Are you rostering either pitcher? Let's start there.
No. I mean, if I did, it would be Anderson, but no.
Okay. Well, then let's get into it. Number one in top stack. 25% chance of being the top stack on today's slate, backed up by 27% aggregate ownership. Clearly the highest on the slate. It is not close. They are number one in our stack score. What do we do here? Because the pricing on the Dodgers is completely broken, and the mid-tier of pitching makes it so you could get to them even if the mid-tier wasn't broken in pitching.
Yeah, I mean, so when pricing is like this in Coors Field and you're just going to get this ridiculous ownership, if you could have this every single day of the season in tournaments, I would actually sign up for it because you're just going to get 30% of the field going to the same offense, and it's going to make it really easy over the course of a season to make a lot of money by not being there. It's annoying on individual days because it's just like you're going in saying, okay, the Dodgers are in a fantastic spot. They're most likely going to do really well, and I'm most likely just going to have a really shitty tournament day because the Dodgers are going to do well. But outside of like, I'm not saying like not to play any of these hitters individually because obviously they're top plays on the slate, but outside of like mixing them into contrarian lineups, as 2-mans and 3-mans, I just have a really hard time thinking I'm going to get to 5-man Dodger stacks here because what's the point? Like, you're getting across the board so much ownership here. Outside of Eddie Alvarez, the lowest owned hitter in this lineup is Gavin Lux at 20%. So you're just stacking 20 to 40% owned guys together. If you look at the $15 tournament on DraftKings, there's 20,500 entries. 30% of that is 7,050. So cool, you got the Dodgers, your stack won the slate. You're now competing to min cash because there are 7,000 other people that have that team. It really, I mean, it's the epitome of thinking about how you can make the
it's
most
a 7,000 person 3v3 at that point.
Right. Like it's just the epitome of thinking about how you can make the most money versus how you can be right the most often. You're going like, assuming the Dodgers do well, you're undoubtedly going to have people on Twitter saying, "Oh my God, imagine people didn't play the Dodgers today." And they're also going to be cashing for $20 on their $15 buy-in. Like, congratulations.
Yeah. This might be like one of the most egregious sets of pricing in a matchup that I've seen in a long time. And I mentioned it before. We don't have him in the ownership right now. I don't know what the lineup's going to end up being. If Trace Thompson is in the lineup for the Dodgers at a flat 2K, like, it's even more ridiculous.
Yeah. Josh Gillum said 3-man over 5-man for him. That's typically how I end up approaching these spots. Either I just won't get much of them at all, or it'll be, I have Minnesota stacks with 2 Dodgers mixed in and, Ranger stacks with 2 Dodgers mixed. Like, it's just really difficult when I'm figuring out which lineups to play and I am trying to get some good combination of projected points, but also lack of ownership. It's really difficult for 5 Dodgers to show up in that lineup. It's easier for 1 or 2. And the thinking there is, yeah, they're still popular, but such a large percentage of people are going to have Dodger stacks. If 1 or 2 Dodgers, if Will Smith and Max Muncy each hit 2 home runs, but everybody else on the Dodgers sucks, yeah, Muncy and Smith are popular, but lineups where you just have them and no other Dodgers, you're still going to be in good shape because so many teams that have those 2 guys together are going to have 3 other guys that didn't do well.
This is going to be a fascinating experience for the no stack experience.
I was thinking about that a little bit more. I was thinking about that this morning. Like, in theory, slates where pricing is really bad, I think not stacking becomes even more viable.
Yeah. Like, clearly I'm going to have pieces of the Dodgers in every lineup, but it's never going to be all of them. But I'm going to have like very assorted 3-mans of the Dodgers, and I'm more than okay with that.
Muncy's got to be an awful play. He's been terrible all year. His expected ISO is 100. His expected ISO against right-handed pitching is 100 points higher than his actual ISO. His expected WOBA is about 45 points higher. He has a 216 BABIP. Guy's fine.
Yeah. By all accounts, from what we're seeing here, we're going to have 5 Dodgers in cash. I'll let you take that sip, but in agreement?
Yeah. It's just a matter of which 5.
I agree. The actual question that I have for you after that is, how many more Rockies are coming into said cash lineup, or just in general? They are second in aggregate ownership, 5th in top stack, 7th in stack score. It's not like Colorado doesn't look solid enough on the opposite side of this. 4.9 run implied total is the 4th highest on the slate.
Yeah, the Rockies look fine too. Not sure how much you would get to in cash, simply because I think you're going to have money to do whatever you want. So, like, on a lot of slates, you would say, oh, 3K Jonathan Dot is hitting second, or $4,500 Connor Joe, or whatever. Randall Grichuk maybe at 3,600. But the thing is, you're probably just going to have the money in a lot of spots to be like, okay, well, or I could just play, Byron Buxton or some other very good hitter. So from a value standpoint, I do think that there are pieces on the Rockies that you look to, potentially look to, whether it's Joe or Daza or Grichuk or Rogers. But I don't think they're the same level of priority as the Dodgers. They're just another team where they have a few guys that are just getting mixed in, where it's like, yeah, if this guy fits in, I'll play him.
How do you see, like, what do you think of their aggregate ownership right now? Is that do you think you get to the Rockies as a 5-man with any sort of regularity, or is this sort of another, I'm probably light here too?
I think they don't have a single guy on their team projected for more than 10% ownership individually. So I think that they are Like, I don't love the matchup against Anderson, but they're a team where I shouldn't have any issues getting to stacks. We also have them projected to have Chris Bryant back. I don't know if that's true.
Mike Gray said Chris Bryant may return in chat, so okay. I guess it's possible.
That would be good. He's 4,200, by the way. That would stand out as a very good play.
I think this might be the biggest gap between the team with the most ownership and teams in second. 27-9.
Yeah. Somebody had said in chat, King of Smack said, "Can you actually fade the Dodgers though?" Yeah, it's not going to feel good. You really just have to keep in mind that you're trying to make money over the course of a season, and you're going to lose a lot more frequently, like lose money more frequently by not playing the Dodgers here, but you're going to win more money in the just aggregate, like by not having them. And the other thing you have to keep in mind too, and like it happens to me as well, there's like a tendency to like really overestimate how likely you are to profit on any individual slate, even if you just play the right plays. Tournaments are super, super, super top heavy. Like you can jam 150 Dodger stacks here, and there's a pretty good chance that you're like, and they do well. And there's a pretty good chance that you're like 1.5x or something, assuming you're not the
lucky no
value there either that wins the 7,000 person 3-man.
This Dodgers team is just, this Dodgers team is just a total wild card.
My biggest concern with fading the Dodgers isn't that I don't play them and they do well. That's just going to happen a lot. It's that I don't play them and they come in with like half the ownership that we're projecting because everybody else does the same thing I'm doing.
Yeah.
Like if I play these Red Sox and Yankees and Blue Jay stacks and they're 8 to 10% owned and the Dodgers come in at 12 to 15%, that's what I am concerned about. It's not that 30% owned Dodgers do well. That I don't really care about.
I think they're going to be in the 30s or close to it, 25 to 30, somewhere in that range. I think we're way more right than wrong today.
I'll be really interested to see tomorrow, to look back and see what the good 150 max players did with the Dodgers compared to what the field does with the Dodgers.
Tune into the process tomorrow morning. I'll get that posted up and we'll take a look at it and break it all down. Angels and Whites. Do you have anything else in this game?
No, it's obviously going to make or break the slate.
Yep. Angels and White Sox. 4.4 run implied total for the Angels. 4.1 for the Sox. Noah Syndergaard and Lucas Giolito. Syndergaard coming in at 10% owned, 6,900. Nice price for Thor. Giolito, 8,300, 28% owned. I have no disagreements here. Is it a great matchup against the Angels? No, not really. But it is from a strikeout perspective. And if these two things come together, I mean, Giolito is live for double digits in strikeouts here today.
Yeah, so Giolito has been garbage recently, but the price tag has dropped like $2,000 from where it should be. So you kind of just don't even have to talk about how bad he's been recently because it accounts for it. If he were coming off of 3 or 4 good starts, he'd not be $8,300. And it's not like he's had easy matchups either, especially in those last 2 where he went negative. He faced the Blue Jays, he faced Houston. The Angels, obviously have 2 of the best hitters in baseball. They also have Taylor Ward. After that, it drops off substantially. And like you said, there's a lot of strikeouts as well. The discount in price on Giolito is enough for me to just not even really bother digging into what if there's, any red flags recently. I guess it is worth mentioning that his fastball velocity has been down a little bit. Last start, it was at 92.4. For the season, it's at 93.2. But the price tag just alleviates like all of these concerns for me.
Same. I don't know how you don't go to him. I think relative to salary, he probably has the biggest upside of anybody on the slate.
He's got the highest strikeout percentage on the slate, and he's facing a team that strikes out a ton.
If you're flipping or if you're forced to choose, is it Giolito or Montgomery for you?
At current ownership, probably Giolito in tournaments.
Okay.
Just because of the gap in strikeout upside.
Yeah.
If the ownership were to get the same, then probably Montgomery because he does project a little bit better. In cash, probably Montgomery because he does project a little bit better.
I'm going to say this one out loud just to help everybody out. Mike Gray, please do not play Fede in cash. That is, you could not be more wrong.
Wait, what if he's the guy that's been taking my 1K head-to-heads and playing like Senzatella and shit? Don't talk him off of this.
If you're the guy that's been taking Adams head-to-heads, then please play Fede in cash. If you're not the guy that's been taking Adams head-to-heads, I mean this sincerely, you're playing cash incorrectly. Sorry to do that to you. What about your boy Syndergaard?
6,900. The ownership makes sense to me. He's cheap. If you get the sum, that's fine. It's not a great matchup. The White Sox have started to hit better, which is what we expected. Like, they started the season out really slowly, and it was just like, okay, it's a matter of time before this offense starts to hit, and they've started to hit. Syndergaard also not striking guys out anymore. Doesn't have the same fastball velocity he used to. Still does a good job limiting hard contact, getting ground balls. He's okay. The price tag is a little cheap, but it's still hard to make a good case for, outside of ownership, in individual lineups. It's hard to make a good case for like why you would be playing Noah Syndergaard instead of George Kirby.
Are you playing Angels bats on the opposite side of the Giolito ownership? Because this looks like a really interesting spot. Unfortunately, they're already third in aggregate ownership.
That probably is yeah, I mean, that's a little misleading. Like, right now we have 10% ownership going. Well, you have Trout and Ohtani, who are just ridiculously good plays always. They're both at 10%. Ward's at 8. Then it's, Rengifo at 7, Walsh at 5, Marsh at 5. Like, none of those ownership numbers are particularly concerning.
No, but like, it's not a spot where like Trout's at 20, Ohtani's at 20, and everybody else is at 6. Like, it's flatter than I was originally expecting it to be.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, 28% on Giolito on the opposite side
here, particularly the top 4.
They are pretty sizable in negative leverage. If I'm just, I don't have the leverage number in front of me, but I assume that's the case.
Yeah. I guess that's kind of what I was getting at, though, is like, I care more about the individual plays than the team, and as far as leverage goes. So, like, the Angels stack is projected to be overowned, but when you think about it in terms of Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout being 10%, I have absolutely no issue playing those guys at 10% ownership.
No, same. I do think they're overowned, even independently looking at Trout and Ohtani. But yeah, like, clearly, I'm happy to have a stack with Trout and Ohtani, and these guys aren't at 8% or 9%. It's whatever on a day like today when a third of the lineups are going to be Dodgers.
Right. Also, as far as the White Sox, I mean, I'm never opposed to stacking against Syndergaard. Obviously, it hasn't really been working out because he keeps managing to not give up home runs. But there is still massive stolen base upside for everybody on this team.
And they're not owned at all. Tim Anderson at 4%, Gavin Sheets at 2%, everybody else at 1%. So
yeah, I wanted to see, obviously, like, Tim Anderson will run. I wanted to see what the stolen base numbers look like for guys individually on this team. Anderson's at 11, Roberts at 11, Engels at 9, Anderson's at 8, Mendick, Harrison, Pollock, Grandal, Garcia all at 1. But yeah, like, obviously Roberts going to run, Anderson's going to run, but there's no reason other guys won't. They do have a pretty slow team, though, outside of a few guys, but still, like, Syndergaard is incapable of preventing anybody from stealing bases.
One last call for the likes. Everybody hit that thumbs up if you can, and just sign up if you want to. MLB Strategy Show, one gigantic word, all caps. Get a month of Stokastic Plus for 50% off. It's a great deal. Again, MLB Strategy Show, one gigantic word, all caps, will get you 50% off a Stokastic Plus monthly membership. That covers every sport, not just baseball. Last game, Mariners and Orioles. We finally get to the best pitching option today. We'll see where you actually land. 4.1 run implied total for the Mariners, 3.4 for the Orioles. George Kirby and Tyler Wells in this one. Kirby, 36% owned at 7,100. Wells, 7% owned at 6,200. I don't have a single bit of issue with George Kirby's price. To me, a likely option in cash, maybe the most likely option given the $7,100 price tag. Where do you land on Kirby?
Yeah, I mean, he's just mispriced. It's a negative park shift for the Orioles as well. I think everybody knows at this point that I like the Orioles 1 through 6 as far as hitters, but it's a mispricing. The guy's got a 23% strikeout percentage, only a 3% walk percentage, 3.4 xFIP. He's one of the best pitching prospects in baseball. In a good park, he's much cheaper than he should be. I really think that the cash pitching options are just some combination of Montgomery, Giolito, and Kirby. Probably leaning Montgomery and Kirby at this point, but Yeah, the ownership makes sense. If you wanted to shave some of that off and just spread it out to some other guys, that's fine. But I think he's pretty clearly the best guy in this price range.
Yep, we are on the same page there. Any specific thoughts on Tyler Wells? It's a great strikeout matchup.
Yeah, I mean, I have a really hard time getting there. He's got a lower strikeout percentage than Syndergaard. One thing to keep an eye on here is what the Mariners lineup looks like. I don't know if we'll even have that by lock, but Jesse Winker for sure has a suspension coming. JP Crawford probably has a suspension coming. Julio Rodriguez may have a suspension coming. They'll probably all appeal and it won't matter today anyway. But
Yeah,
there's some chance that we just get an absolute garbage Mariners lineup.
very true. Fede, Wells, Bubic, all next to each other, all basically same ownership. Do you have a preference in that trio?
You said Fetty, Wells, and Bubic?
Yeah, they're all like
Fetty.
7% owned.
Fetty.
They're all right next to each other in salary.
Fetty.
Okay.
Probably. I think it's Fetty / Bubic and then like a step back to Wells.
That's funny. I think it's Wells.
I think Tyler Wells is not good.
Let's be clear here. I don't really care about any of them. They're all basically the same thing to me. But
yeah, I don't think Tyler Wells is the same thing, I guess is my point.
Okay. I have Wells higher than
Are
Fede and Bubic in
you
projection.
are you over
5 innings?
Are you over projecting him because he was a reliever last year?
I don't know. If Steamer is, then yes.
Okay.
I mean, 20% K rate is not exactly like reliever numbers, so I doubt it.
I mean, this year he's at 15%.
Fuck, maybe it is. I didn't think you were going to tell me a number that was like that.
Yeah, 15.3%.
That's not good, man. Now, to be fair, I do have a 24% aggregate strikeout rate on the Mariners, so he is helped out by a strikeout matchup in general.
Yeah,
and again, this
could be even better here.
We are quibbling. Like, I don't think any three of these guys look good, but I do have Wells at 12.6, Bubic at 11.8, and Fede at 11.2.
Yeah, I mean, so, and to my point, Tyler Wells last year, 44 games out of the bullpen, struck out 29% of hitters. This year, 14 starts, 15.3% strikeout percentage.
Okay, I don't know where the truth lies then. That's a gigantic. That's this guy mows everyone down to this guy pitches like Syndergaard. So I don't know. I don't really care. It's Tyler Wells, and he's not one of the 5 best guys that I'm getting to at a pitcher today. Are we going to go to? I don't think you're going to Orioles bats unless there's some value to you on the opposite side of Kirby.
There is some value there, just because again, it is a good 1 through 6, and there's negative leverage and all that, but certainly going to be difficult to prioritize the Orioles in any way, shape, or form. The Mariners side's the more appealing side. I mean, Tyler Wells isn't very good, but I think it's still tough to get to a lot of them. Winker at 3,800, if he is in the lineup, looks good. Rodriguez is really expensive. Obviously, if you can get there, that's fine. He's been very good already, as advertised, but still not a great hitter's park. It's a good Orioles bullpen behind Wells. Decent chance that the lineup is weak here as well. So, the Mariners are okay, but not one of my preferred options.
Kyrie Irving has requested and received permission to find a sign and trade offer.
Cool.
That should be interesting.
King of Smack asked about 6 through 9 in the Dodgers lineup. The issue is they're getting ownership too.
Yeah. I don't ever look like, I also don't look at it thinking like, oh, I got a roster 6 through 9 today.
Well, but I mean, like there are instances where a team will be getting a lot of ownership, but you can point to individual guys that aren't. With the Dodgers right now, with the projected lineup we have in, sure, you have Muncy, Turner, Smith, Freeman all north of 30%. Chris Taylor's at 28%, Justin Turner's at 22%, Bellinger's at 21%, Gavin Lux is at 21%, and then Eddie Alvarez is at 9%. But who the hell wants to play whatever Eddie Alvarez is? Like,
yeah,
it's not an example of a team where like there's a few guys pulling up the ownership. The entire team is getting it.
Yeah.
For Josh Gillum, yes, there are suspensions. It's just a matter of if it's tonight.
It's usually not the next day.
Right. Chances are they're going to announce the suspensions sometime this afternoon or tomorrow. But either way, they're going to announce the suspension. Winker's going to appeal, and then he'll play tonight, and they'll uphold it or not at some future time.
Yep. Top stacks today.
Obviously the Dodgers, but also not the Dodgers.
Yeah.
Dodgers and cash. Yankees, Blue Jays, Minnesota. I really like all of them.
Okay. Top pitchers.
Montgomery, Giolito, Kirby.
There we go. GPP videos in a bit.
Yep.
There it is, everybody. Adam will be back for the deeper dive later tonight. I will be back for Live Before Lock. Don't miss either one of them. We'll break this down even more for 2 more hours. Good luck to everybody. Enjoy yourselves tonight. Win some money. And that's it. Go to Stokastic.com. Sign up. MLB Strategy Show is the code. Peace.